Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Lianas Senior Transition Support, helping you navigate home care and senior residences.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Matt Delvecchio, specializing in home care, downsizing in the senior living industry. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a jam-packed show today. Coming right up is sleep overrated. We're going to be discussing the hidden powers of sleep and its influence on the brain. Then, did you know that November is National Diabetes Awareness Month? Well, you're going to want to be tuning in, especially if you or someone you know has type 1 diabetes. Then, scientist extraordinaire Jay Ingram will be joining me to discuss his new book called The Future of Us. Really fascinating book, as we're going to talk about how AI will affect us, robot technology, and what foods we're going to be eating, and even what we're going to look like in the future. And I'll wrap up the show with Elves for Seniors, an unbelievable Montreal initiative that will be providing gifts to over 3,500 seniors across Montreal in more than 35 seniors residences. That's going to be coming up after the 4:30 news. All right, so are you getting enough sleep? How many times have you heard that sleep is overrated? I sometimes catch myself saying the same thing as a small business owner where, well, being sleep deprived can sometimes be the norm, as is the case for many business owners and employees. And I'm sure there are many others, like parents with a newborn, students cramming for exams, and the night owls. It's almost like a badge of honor in a sense, but is it really the right thing to do? Well, let's bring in Dr. Adrien Peyrache. Dr. Peyrache is an associate professor in the Department of Neurology and Neurosurgery at McGill University to discuss the hidden powers of sleep and its influence on the brain. Dr. Peyrache, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming into the studio here on a Sunday. Really appreciate it. Fascinating topic. Let's get right into it. So, what happens with our brains when we sleep?
Wait, a lot of things actually, but the first thing the brain does is to actually stop listening to the outside world because you want to sleep, so you don't want to be interrupted by sound and vision. So the brain stops listening and hearing. And how does it do that? Actually, neurons, which are the nerve cells in your brain, are electrical cells that send signals to other neurons and the rest of the body. And when you fall asleep, actually these nerve cells change the way they transmit signals to the other neurons. And by doing so, they do it in a way that is less influenced by the external world. And something extraordinary starts happening. They all start to shut down collectively from time to time. And this becomes more and more regular. And in the deepest stage of sleep, around like 40, 50 minutes into sleep, they start oscillating like interrupted by this moment of silence. You're totally unconscious. It will be really hard to wake you up at this time. If something wakes you up, or a baby perhaps, let me tell you, you're not gonna be in a great mood. Your brain is totally shut down. Still active though, right? Because if you need to wake up and to be active, it has to be ready, but still pretty, inhibited somehow and dampen activity.
Amazing. And amazing to hear your enthusiasm. Never thought sleep can be so passionate, but this is your world, Dr. Peyrache. You study this, you research this, and what you've said then, based on the importance of what it does to those neurons. So is it fair to say that sleep is overrated? How important is sleep then for us?
Oh my God, no, it's not overrated. It's so important. It's vital. So during sleep, the entire body, it's not just the brain, right? But the entire body recovers, and including the brain. But in your body, the immune system, the bones, the skin, all these cells regenerate. And it's the same in the brain. The brain actually takes this time to rest, to clean out all the toxins that are created when we think, when we're active. Actually, this is what is happening. When neurons are active, they create this toxin and it needs to wash out. So this is like the primary function of sleep, is to restore your vital functions, including your cognitive functions in the brain.
Very interesting. I want to talk about memories because memories are created during sleep. And is there a difference? There's good memories, there's bad memories. What's going on? What creates good and bad memories?
That's a great question. I assume that when you say good or bad, you mean perhaps pleasant and traumatic, like at the two extremes of the
Mm-hmm.
spectrum, right? But yes, so both are actually, the sleep plays a role for both memories, but it's not exactly the same brain networks that will consolidate, that will reinforce one or the other type of memory. It's There's strongly overlapping, but there are places in the brain, areas in your brain that are more associated with pleasant things, some that are associated with more traumatic, anxious, fear, scared. So we know, and we start to understand actually how these different areas in your brain interact with each other in one or the other memory. But this is like, ongoing work in the field. Super interesting.
Very interesting indeed. We're talking with Dr. Adrien Peyrache. He's an associate professor in the Department of Neurology and Neurosurgery at McGill University, and the effects of sleep on the brain, as we've clearly heard. Sleep is important and is definitely not overrated. It's amazing how those toxins are just sort of destroyed while we sleep, and obviously, if we don't sleep enough, those toxins don't get destroyed as much as we really need to do that. Now, Dr. Peyrache, you are also involved in AI and the brain, very much involved with MILA. MILA is the Quebec Artificial Intelligence Institute, and that's a community of scientists and interdisciplinary teams that are committed to advancing artificial intelligence to the benefit of all. In fact, I'm going to have one of your colleagues next week on the show about maybe some of the big concerns about AI, but MILA is really about putting together people like yourself, neuroscientists, and the scientific community to make AI as good for the public as possible. That being said, can AI help in figuring out how the brain works?
We think so, actually, absolutely. It's so hard to understand the system. Just imagine 80, even more neurons, 80 billion neurons in the brain that each form about 10,000 connections with other neurons. The number of possibilities that can be created by all this gigantic network, it's hard to cope with. So, you can try to do math and physics, but very quickly you'll be limited in the number of things you can predict. AI actually poses the question in a different way. Let's have this network on big computers, and now let's think about like under which condition these networks in computers develop things that are similar to what we observe in the brain to achieve some level of performance or to actually do some task. And this is what we do. Say, let's take this network, train it as is, that it was a brain doing this kind of task, and let's see whether we see something in it that looks like what we see in the brain. And we can do it actually even to understand sleep, because once it's been trained, then we shut down external input to this network. We introduce noise as if this network was sleeping. And then suddenly what we see, like right now in the lab with students, is that we observe that memories are replayed, that memories are reprocessed even in these artificial networks. And we're really excited about it.
That is fascinating. And, we've got these terrible diseases like Alzheimer's. I know you personally are very much involved in the advancements of epilepsy and even when it comes to the pharmaceutical part of it. So it is very exciting. And AI doesn't necessarily have to be all negative. That's a perfect example here, how it can be positive for society. We're already out of time, Dr. Peyrache. I want to thank you very much for a really fascinating subject, and love to have you back on.
Thank you.
All right, that's Dr. Adrien Peyrache. He's an associate professor in the Department of Neurology and Neurosurgery at McGill University. All right, coming up, did you know that November is National Diabetes Awareness Month? You'll want to be tuning in, especially if you or someone you know has type 1 diabetes.